Hi, everybody. Welcome to 1200XL. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about one-on-one.
You see what I was doing right there? I was pretending I was my little animated Aaron. He bobs around. He looks both ways.
Is that what animated Aaron does?
That's what he did in the little opening there.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Because we're in the little meteor hole.
Mm-hmm. It's a meteor
what do they
hole.
call it? Crater.
I prefer meteor hole myself.
Yeah.
So
I'm great, Boat. 101's awesome. I'm ready to go on this.
I want to talk to you about your experience playing basketball. Now, I know you were quite the sportsman in school. You were on the tennis team.
Yeah.
You were in the marching band, so you weren't averse to physical activity. Did you ever pursue any dreams related to basketball?
No. Although I will say I played a lot of basketball when I lost my first 100 pounds. I used to get off work every night. I had a deal with the cops. They'd let me in the city park at 11 o'clock at night or midnight. And I would go to the basketball court and just play basketball by myself.
You just play
hours.
yourself?
And eventually people started showing up to play.
It's like Field of Dreams, man.
It was. And so some nights I would have 10 people out there, and some nights it would just be me.
Wow.
So, but I still suck, no matter how much I tried.
I'd love to see some footage of you out there in the court. I just picture you like what's his name? And Wesley Snipes. And you're out there like
White Man Can't Jump.
Yeah, that sort of era of clothing, and you might be wearing a do-rag in this particular fantasy that I have. And
wear those.
You're just slamming them down. Slamma-jamma.
That movie had an accurate title for me. It could be White Man Can't Jump, Play, or even perform in any way in a basketball court.
Now, did you ever have a basketball hoop outside your house growing up?
I never did. We never did. I was not into basketball that much. My neighbor had one. I used to go over there and play sometimes. That always seemed like a crazy idea because of the ball could out in the road or over the hill.
That's true. That's true. And you lived sort of, well, I don't think, you didn't grow up in a real busy street, but it wasn't exactly dead.
Right.
So.
When I was a kid, it was a lot busier.
Well, that's surprising considering there's 8,000 more houses around there now than there were then.
Well, not where I'm at, just in the back.
Yeah.
Now, what about you? Did you play basketball?
I never played organized ball. That's what they call it, just ball.
Is that what that's what the cool people say?
Yeah. Basketball was something I always thought I'd be good at until I started playing. And then it became apparent quite immediately that I didn't really have a lot of skill. I was always good with the, I felt like I could be a good outside guy. But as far as like charging to the rim, I tripped over myself a lot, on the way to the rim, and I just ended up falling a heap. It was
You've
no
got
good.
some of the proportions of a 7-foot basketball player. It's just that you're a foot shorter.
That's true. But we had a hoop outside. It was actually hanging over our garage. It was like that deal. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And but unfortunately, one of the neighborhood ruffians decided he was going to throw down a slam and rip the whole thing off, and that was the end of the good times.
He shattered the backboard.
He did. Not unlike the game. Speaking of the game, Aaron, let's talk about one-on-one.
All right.
So this was one of the early hits for Electronic Arts, EA, famous for its Atari 8-bit games. A lot of times the Atari 8-bit was the lead platform for these games. This was published by EA in 1983. This came in that familiar record album style cover. If you're not familiar with the physical packaging of one-on-one, this comes from a time when EA was publishing a lot of their games in what looked like 45 record sleeves. And they would have a gatefold where they'd open them up. You'd see pictures of the programmers and things, which was really unusual. A lot of times at this time, game programmers toiled away in anonymity. And of course, Activision was the first publisher to really make superstars out of their programmers, but EA was right behind. And they actually treated these guys like the artists that they were, Electronic Arts. That's the message they were trying to send.
They forgot their own message, Bode.
They did.
Later on, they totally forgot that message.
The EA of today is not the same as the Trip Hawkins EA of yesteryear.
No, it is not.
This game was developed by Eric Hammond and Chuck Peavy. And the graphics were done by Greg Hammond. Eric and Greg, I believe, were brothers. And the concept of this game was actually the developer. I read that Trip Hawkins actually was the person behind this. He said, "Why don't you make a game based on the old one-on-one competitions of the 1960s that the NBA used to do, and back in the 60s and the 70s." And Aaron, as someone who was around back in the 60s and the 70s, I'm sure you can attest to this.
I wasn't around the 60s.
Yeah, come on. Maybe that the NBA was not the juggernaut that it is today. It was struggling to be relevant, and of course the NBA was also competing against a rival league. You had the ABA and the NBA. Yep. And so there was a hair tonic company called Vitalis that would sponsor these one-on-one competitions, and they would play these, I guess, on Sundays, Wide World of Sports and all that. And it would be two guys, half court, just playing a game against each other. Could you imagine how cool that would be to see these days, to see like Stephen Curry versus LeBron James? I'd love to see something like that.
It's funny when you mentioned that to me, I was baffled because I was, as someone who watched a ton of Wide World of Sports and sports TV, I'd never heard of this. Mm-hmm. And I think that the concept is awesome. I don't think players would do it now, if you want the truth.
There's all kinds of reasons, from the, not wanting to lose face, because if you lose in one-on-one, there's only one person to blame. And of course, there's also the additional liability with insurance, and I'm sure agents would have issues with people playing outside of their contracts and all that stuff. But I would love to see this sort of thing come back, because there's nothing like two guys, just kind of squaring off against each other. You really get to see, especially from the defensive side of things. And
I think it'd be really neat.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, it's basketball is in the unique position where they could pull this off as a team sport and have it not suck.
Right.
Because you're not going to have like one-on-one hockey. You know what I mean?
You can't really do one-on-one American football. Basketball is good.
You can have skills competition.
Yeah.
But not a proper game.
Right. Basketball is suited to this in a unique way.
I love it. And I'm gonna try to find some of these. I'd love to watch a few of these guys. I wasn't a huge basketball fan when I was a kid, but I knew some of the guys. Mm-hmm. So it'd be fun to go back and actually catch some of these games.
Oh, yeah. And of course, everything about watching these on YouTube is great now, from not only, the different styles of uniform for back then, but just watching the people in the crowd and how they're dressed. Everybody's smoking, it was back in the glory years of sport, really.
Yeah, and it's something else about this, too. If you're playing a game, if you play a Madden or something, or even any basketball game with like all the players, the level of complexity soars. Like this game boils down basketball to its core components. And so you just go out there. It's a great, fun game. It's just like you would play on a playground, with your friends.
Right.
So you can identify with what's going on. So I like everything about it. A brilliant move.
Yeah. So on the cover of this game, unlike other basketball games of the time, you see real, actual people. This is still early on in the sports oeuvre of video games, and there weren't too many licensed sports titles that actually featured real players. I want to say that there was a Pete Rose baseball game that came out around this time, and of course, I think Earl Weaver baseball was probably a little bit after this. That might have been '85, but
it was early days. Yeah,
there weren't too many licensed sports titles, and so this stood out because of that. And this made this game a big seller, I'm sure, because if you just called this game one-on-one, I mean, what are we doing here? That's not. It doesn't exactly make you want to pick it up off the shelf. This game features prominently on the cover two of the biggest superstars of the era. It features Dr. J and Larry Bird.
Yeah, and they got it right in the game too by making it look like they do with the colored uniforms they've got, plus with the numbers they've got on them. They did a good job.
Yeah. So who are these guys? So I thought I'd give you a little history lesson on both of these guys.
Okay.
First up, Julius Erving, Dr. J. This guy was born 1950. So he is a good 10 years older than Larry Bird. Larry Bird was in his ascendancy when this game came out, and I wouldn't say that Dr. J, his career wasn't exactly fading, but he was definitely on the downward slope of his career. Yeah, he played in both the ABA and the NBA. He played from 71 to 87, so quite a long career. He was
one of the pivotal reasons the ABA got a good hard look by the NBA, because they saw players of his quality. They wanted him.
Right. So he played for the Virginia Squires in the ABA and the New York Nets in the he played for the Squires and the New York Nets, which were at the time part of the ABA. Then when he transferred over to the NBA, he played for the Philadelphia 76ers. This guy was really the first guy that brought the slam dunk into the mainstream. He could jump like nobody's business, and the phrase "above the rim," he sort of popularized that style of play. Up until then, the slam dunk was just sort of seen as a kind of a Neanderthal type move, and he brought a real artistry to the slam dunk that had never been seen before. Larry Bird, sort of the opposite in a lot of ways. Larry Bird, of course, the hick from French Lick, Indiana, which it's not very far, less than 5 hours away from where we live, French Lick, Indiana. And he played in the NBA about 10 years after Dr. J did. He played from 79 to 92, so he had a much longer career. And he played his full career with the Boston Celtics. And he was most famous for his sort of take no prisoners attitude. He was not always a bright and cheerful fellow. He was a very intense player. He had a famous rivalry with Magic Johnson. And the Lakers-Celtics rivalry was the most famous in all of basketball for a long time. And he was a great shooter, one of the most prolific shooters in NBA history. There's a famous scene where he comes into the locker room at a three-point competition, and all the guys are in there, and he just announces, "Hey, who's going to win second in the shot competition today?" He was that confident. So,
I was a big fan of Larry Bird. And the Celtics, because I liked their individual players. I mean, really, I didn't have a team per se in basketball, but I end up liking the Celtics because of Bird. But I always had a thing for these guys that were like real technicians,
Mm-hmm.
And Bird was like just a great long distance shooter.
Yeah.
And he was also known for his ability to do like blind passes and stuff.
Oh yeah,
assists.
the no look pass was something. I mean, you watch his highlight reels. It's amazing to look at. So both these guys, legends of the sport, of course. Both these guys in the Hall of Fame.
Dr. J, I did catch some of his career, and as I recall, now stop me if I'm wrong here, Bo, but I believe he was one of the guys that did the big sky hook, wasn't he?
No, Skyhook was a different guy.
Was that a different guy?
Yeah, I believe that was Wilt Chamberlain did the sky hook.
No, I think this guy did the sky hook. We'll have to look into it. Somebody help me out here.
We'll have to look into it and see.
Wilt Chamberlain, I also caught the tail end of his career, and he was a whole different kettle of fish.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the sky hook guy.
That's who it was. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I caught some of this guy predated me by a smidge.
Yeah.
So I didn't get. But mostly what I caught was Bird and the Celtics, and you weren't kidding. The Celtics-Lakers rivalry was a real big deal in the early '80s, and for me, that's when the NBA peaked, and I sort of lost interest after that. And of course, now it's probably super duper peaked.
Yeah, it's a shame that
basketball is not a sport that I'm really that much into.
Right.
I'd much rather play it than I would watch it.
Yeah, I feel like basketball is the one sport that I really grew up in the best time you could possibly grow up. Because like when I was coming around, first of all, one of the big things me growing up was the Dream Team. The first time that the NBA sent pro players to play in the Olympics. And that's when you had like Jordan and Bird and all these guys and Barkley all on the same team. It was the ultimate all-star team.
I hated that so much.
Why did you hate that?
Because it ruined the Olympics for a lot of like college guys. Plus, it made the Olympics not the least bit fun to watch. Watch an all-star team smash every other team in the world every year. It just didn't do it.
First of all, that only happened for 1 year, and then the rest of the years, the next Olympics, America got smashed because everybody else got really good at basketball. So I think if you actually chart the way that developed, it's not at all how you remember it. But anyway,
I don't remember it like you just said. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, you should look it up. But the Dream Team was great. I loved the Dream Team. I loved watching Jordan. I loved watching the ascendancy of the Pistons in the late 80s. I was a big basketball guy growing up, and then I lost interest at about the time that I entered into high school. And I didn't really have time to watch a lot of sports, and I wasn't into it anymore. But anyway, this game is a one-on-one competition between Dr. J and Larry Bird. And you have a lot of options right off the bat. Basically, any option you can possibly think of is present. You can choose a difficulty level, and the way that they do the difficulty was kind of neat. Instead of just making it like easy, difficult, expert, you got park and rec, varsity, college, and pro. And when I was a kid, I had no idea what park and rec meant.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, I wasn't sure, and I wasn't real sure what varsity meant either when I was a kid. And so I wasn't sure if the difficulty started at pro and went up, or if it started at park, or if it went the other way around. But, of course, park and rec is the easiest difficulty level. You can watch a demo of this game, which was cool. There weren't a whole lot of games where you could just watch the computer play. Of course, you're not going to want to do that for a long time, but you can. You can set this to be whenever you make a basket, if you get the ball back or the other guy gets the ball back. You can either choose to play a timed game, or you can play to a set score. Playing to a set score, I find, is a much more enjoyable way to play this, because the game can go on, especially if you're just playing against the computer. I like playing to 21. It's a neat thing. And so when you get into the game, the first thing that you'll notice if you've played any other basketball games from this time period is how big the individual sprites are, how detailed they are, and how slow this game moves compared to other basketball games. If you've played the Atari basketball for the Atari 8-bits, have you played that one, Aaron?
Long ago, I did, yeah.
Yeah, that game is basically, you can't even call them stick figures.
Yeah, it's low end.
Yeah. You're basically, the ball careens around the court like a pinball, and if your player just happens to be in the general vicinity, he will pick it up and basically carry it around. And when you shoot it, you have no control over your shot. You just sort of fling it into the stratosphere. If it goes in, it goes in. If it doesn't, it's really, really not good. This game plays like a real game of basketball. It's played from a half-court perspective, and if you can picture yourself sitting in the stands behind a half-court of basketball, maybe 20 rows up, you're looking down upon the action. You're kind of even with the rim, your viewpoint, so you have a full view of the court. The court and the back is all black, and it almost sort of reminds me of, have you ever seen The Wiz before?
The movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, do you remember when Dorothy first lands in Oz?
Yes.
Okay. So you remember how it's like she's like in this playground and everything is just sort of half lit, and it looks like a lot of stuff is like with black lights and stuff. Yeah. That's what this reminds me of. It's like,
wow, that's a long way to go.
It is a long way to go, but that was the first thing that came to mind. Could they have made this with more colors, with the having some stands in the back and having the wood court of the wood of the court? They could have done that. Does it take away from it? It's hard to say. It does make it seem a little bit more unreal, but maybe unreal in a good way. It never bothered me. And what do you think about the way this game looks, Aaron?
This game has the best and worst graphics in one game, all rolled into one. The funny thing about it is, it's almost like this game takes place in someone's fever dream, because it reminds me of that Star Trek episode Spectre of the Gun, where they go to that cowboy town and there's just like the fronts of buildings in the back of this void. Mm-hmm. That's what this is. It's just everything's black except for the outlines of the lines on the court and the basket, and of course you've got your scoreboard up there. But the characters of Dr. J and Larry Bird are awesome looking. They're big. You can see who they are. Their arms and legs move like a basketball players probably would. The ball looks good, and so it's a mixed bag. Now I will say this: do the graphics take away from the gameplay? No, they don't. And so with that reasoning, the graphics have never bothered me, even when I played this back. Of course, also this is from '83, so you were sort of used to stuff looking kind of crummy. And then when you saw the characters, you were like, wow, those look great. And you sort of forgot about the rest of the crumminess. Right.
Dr. J and Larry Bird are not the only characters in this game. There is also a referee that will come out and blow a whistle and will call various penalties.
Hacking, reaching in.
Right. Traveling.
Charging.
There is also a custodian, which it might be modeled on the same model as the referee, because every once in a while when you slam the ball down, the entire backboard will shatter. and you will see this. This will happen in slow motion, and the referee / custodian will come out with a little sweeper. It tickled me because the referee also kind of curses at you. They're like, meh, 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 and that Q*bert sort of cursing style, being like, "Why'd you make me sweep this thing up?" So that is really, I thought that was really clever.
Yeah.
There are instant replays in this game. This has got to be the first basketball game in history with instant replays. You'll be playing along, the action will stop, and then the text will come up instant replay, and it'll show you in slow motion, which is really, really slow considering the general pace of this game. Another really neat thing. In the documentation of this game and in the advertisements, they make a big deal about saying that they actually consulted Dr. J and Larry Bird about their play styles, and they would show them footage of this game, and whenever they wanted to make changes, they would make those changes. Now, how much of that is marketing versus reality, who can say? But I will say that these guys do play differently. Bird definitely shoots three-pointers better than Dr. J. You are more likely to connect with a dunk with Dr. J than Larry Bird. So, you know, on the very superficial level, these guys do play differently. The way that these guys, their arms move is very impressive. The way that you steal the ball, it doesn't seem quite as random as other games where you actually have to maneuver your hand in the right place. The way they get away with only having one button, if you tap the button while you have the ball, if you just tap it, you'll turn around and face away from your opponent. If you hold it down, you'll shoot it. If you hold it down while you're facing away from your opponent, you'll actually do a turnaround jump shot. The animation's very impressive. There's really a lot to like about the overall presentation of this game. You know, we talked about the speed before. This game did get ported later on to the Amiga a couple years later, and they sped the action up a lot, and in addition to speeding the action up, they added the wood court, they added the stands in the background. It looks like you're playing in a real arena. What did you think about the Amiga version of this game, Aaron?
Well, just to back, also, believe it or not, when I was a kid, I played this in the Coco. So the Coco version, that's a lot more similar to this than the Amiga version. Just to back up for a split second, you talked about the controls. That's another thing that makes this game. The tapping of the button to spin your back, that's what happens in a real game of one-on-one.
Sure.
You get your body in front of your opponent, and the spins and stuff you do are awesome.
Yeah.
All that's great. Now, when you talk about the Amiga version, clearly the graphics, you have the parquet floor and the colors and scheme and whatnot, and it looks more impressive. But it's really fast. I would say it's probably 1.5 times the speed of the Atari version.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And me personally, maybe it's just because I played the Atari and the Coca version so much, I don't actually like it to be that fast. One of the things I like about this game is that you have time to plot out how you want to approach the basket. When am I going to do my spin move? When am I going to shoot? What am I going to do here? The other game felt a little too chaotic for me. So if it's just me personally, I prefer the Atari speed of the game. Plus, in a weird way, I like the graphics. Again, I've been used to playing on the Atari. I mean, they're clearly inferior graphics, but there's no distractions. It's just you, your opponent, and the outline of the field. That's all you need. I don't have a problem with that. The Amiga, like I said, it looks better, but it's not like $1 million screen or anything. It looks better, but it's not mega better.
Right. And I think that the players themselves, the player models, I would say that they look maybe, 1.5 times as good if you want to use the same game comparison. I mean, they look better, but they still don't look, it's almost like an uncanny valley effect where in the Atari version, they're still so abstract that you can superimpose what the guys look like better and more easily than on the Amiga version where they try and make them look even more realistic. And as a result, you're like, man, that looks like a messed up Larry Bird.
Well, and on the Atari version, they actually move like humans. Like, this is about the speed a basketball game would go.
Right.
You could make up this amount of space in this amount of time. The Amiga version was just, again, I thought it was too fast. Now, if we played it more, we might be into it. Getting back to the backboard. When I was a young man, when that happened, it was like the most awesome thing. I remember the first time it happened, we were all freaking stunned. one of my buddies told me it had happened, and I didn't believe him because kids made up crap all the time.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And I distinctly remember sitting at my neighbor's house when we slam dunked it and broke the backboard, and it was a hootenanny. We went crazy.
Yeah.
It seems silly, but today. Because it's the effect is it's not like it's the awesomest effect, but it's pretty good.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
And the janitor coming out. This is this game's version of the little troll coming out and kicking the head across the screen in Barbarian. Basically, it's a little tidbit that makes it fun.
Right.
Also, to getting back to the ref, like the refs actually don't screw you. I feel like when they come out, you probably did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to reach in too much, or you traveled or whatever. So the refs, I believe you can turn the refs off too. I like that aspect of it. I mean, overall, this is a game. Are you going to sit down and play this game for like 10 hours? No. Are you going to sit down and play it for 20 minutes? Absolutely. And are you going to play your buddy at it? Absolutely. We just played this the other day on the Amiga, and we had a real good time, didn't we, both?
Yes, absolutely. It's deceptively simple, and you wouldn't think that a one-on-one basketball game would be any good, but it totally is. It's totally great. There were some sequels to this that were released for the 8-bit consoles, and even the Genesis got the sequel. The sequel was Larry Bird against Michael Jordan versus Bird one-on-one. On the whole, I would recommend trying the NES version. It has a similar play style of I'd say the speed is probably closer to the Amiga speed. It does play more quickly, but there are some interesting things that are in that game. Some other modes. There's a 3-point competition that you can do. There is a dunk contest where you call the dunk from a menu, like the menu at the beginning of the game, and then you try and execute it. So there are just some.
I played that.
Yeah, there's some additional features that make it fun. But man, this game, the Atari original, it holds up. It's still just as much fun now as it ever has.
The sequel, it didn't come out on the 8-bits, did it?
No, by the time it came out, the Atari 8-bit was already singing off into the darkness. This game was re-released for the XEGS when the XEGS was launched. It would have been great. Of course, that was still a little bit pre-Jordan. But
can you imagine buying this for the XEGS and considering what it's competing against?
Yeah.
I mean, you would look like an idiot to show this to your friends.
Yeah, you probably didn't. You probably didn't. But it is. But it was one of the games because Atari realized that this is one of the best games on the system, and so they re-released it in cart form. You can still pick this thing up pretty cheap. You can get the 45 style cover sealed on eBay right now for $35.
Yeah.
That's stunning to me. When you consider the price of some of those games like Mule, in that same sort of packaging.
Then you get Bird to autograph it for you.
Yeah.
Or Dr. J. I think they're both. I know Bird's still around.
Yeah, I think they're both still around. The XEGS release, somebody is trying to hawk this thing on eBay for $100 sealed. I think that's probably a little high. You can pick up the cart only for $17 if you're into collecting those carts. The other 8-bit ports of this are all pretty good. Even the DOS CGA port isn't bad. The only really bad looking one is the one for the ColecoVision, which is really surprising considering the ColecoVision usually got pretty good ports. It looks, the characters are monocolor. It looks like an Atari 2600 port. Not good.
I didn't know that it was got a Coleco port. That's very stunning to me.
I didn't know that either.
Give that a whirl.
Yeah. So anyway, this game, I could find one review. Happy Computer from issue 4 in 1985 ranked it the number 10 best game in 1984, and that's the reader's vote, and that encompassed, I guess, the C64, Apple II, and Atari 8-bit versions.
I give this high marks. I mean, it's always when you told me we were playing that this week. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, this is one of my favorite sports games on the 8-bits. It's beautiful and fun in its simplicity. And you get 2 players. I mean, I've spent many an hour playing this with somebody else. And you could load it up today, and it plays dead on. There's no learning curve. You just go in there and play.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Aaron, as we near the end of the show, we should mention that we do record this show live we do 1200 XL once or twice a month. Whenever we do record, we always do it live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Amigos Retro Gaming. We usually record in conjunction with the other podcasts on the network. We have an Amiga show called Amigos. We have a ZX Spectrum show called Our Sinclair, a TRS-80 color computer show called The Coco Show. And of course, you and the Brent do ARG Presents here on Twitch too. You can join the party in Twitch if you're watching this on YouTube. For the first time, you can actually see the Twitch chat on the screen. You can join the crew, Rushi MSX, L. Curtis B, Pixels at Dawn Gaming doing a great job as our mod, Edvin Helland reporting from the man cave over in Norway. Real Reffies here. So still adolescing. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And if you'd like to support the show, you can always support us through Patreon, patreon.com/Our Sinclair. Just $1 a month gives you access to the ad-free version of the show on the podcast, as well as access to our Discord server where you can post a review that we will read each week. So I encourage you to do that if you should feel so inclined. And of course, you can also subscribe to us on Twitch and even just listening to the show. We appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to two guys talk about the Atari 8-bits, the awesome Atari 8-bit computer. Well, Aaron, I guess that's going to be it. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks with another episode of 1200 XL. Bye-bye.
Take it easy.